My name is Audrey Cole. I am 39 years old, and I learned a long time ago that humiliation sounds the cruelest when it is spoken politely. My brother proved that 3 nights before a family dinner that was supposed to celebrate his future. His message came in while I was still at my desk, and at first it looked harmless enough. Just another last-minute change, another small instruction from a family that had always edited me down to something easier to explain. Then I read the real part. He said I could attend dinner with his fiancée's family, but I was not to tell anyone I was his sister. Her father was a federal judge, and it would be embarrassing. A few minutes later, my mother called to smooth it over in the careful voice she always used when she wanted me to accept something ugly without making it inconvenient for anyone else. She said it would be best if I sat at one of the smaller tables in the back near the service door just for one evening, just to keep things comfortable. Comfortable for whom? She did not say. That was the thing about my family. They never needed to scream to make their meaning clear. My brother got the spotlight. I got the explanation. He was introduced with pride. I was managed, hidden, reduced. And still, I told them I would come. I would show up on time, sit where they wanted, and say nothing they had not approved. What none of them understood was that the man they were so desperate to impress would know exactly who I was the second he saw my face. So, before I tell you what happened when he stopped at my table and the whole room went quiet, tell me this. What would you do if your own family only welcomed you by pretending you did not belong to them at all? I did not answer my brother right away. I set my phone face down on the desk in my chambers and stared at the dark reflection in the screen for a few seconds, because some insults arrive so cleanly they do not feel real at first. They feel rehearsed, familiar. Even that message did not come out of nowhere. It came from 39 years of being treated like the piece of the family story that never fit the version they wanted to tell in public. My brother had always been there. One people remembered. He was charming without effort, loud in all the right ways, and raised with the kind of confidence that only comes from knowing the room will bend around you. My parents built their lives around that confidence. They poured money into private schools, summer programs, debate camps, college admissions coaching, all the invisible scaffolding that makes success look natural from the outside. When he got into a prestigious university, they talked about it like our family name had finally been redeemed. When he landed a polished job in Boston, they repeated his title so often you would have thought he had argued before the Supreme Court. I took a different road, the kind no one in my family ever found interesting enough to memorize. I started at community college because it was what I could afford. I transferred on scholarship, worked late, borrowed what I had to, and kept going. Law school was the same. No safety net, no applause, just exhaustion, discipline, and the quiet understanding that if I ever wanted a real life, I would have to build it with my own hands. I became an assistant U.S. attorney and spent years prosecuting fraud and public corruption cases that made powerful men very nervous. After that, I clerked for Judge Miriam Caldwell, one of the sharpest minds on the First Circuit, a woman whose standards could strip the ego off anyone in under 10 minutes. She was the first person in my life who looked at me and saw not what I lacked, but what I could carry. Over time, she became more than a mentor. She became the closest thing I had ever known to being chosen without condition. When I told her about the dinner, I expected irritation on my behalf. What I got instead was silence, then a very still expression I had learned to respect. She asked me for the name of my brother's fiancé. Then she asked for her father's name. The moment I said it, something changed in her face. She leaned back in her chair and let out the smallest breath of disbelief. Then she said, "So that is who they are trying to impress?" I asked if she knew him. She gave me a look over the rim of her coffee cup and said, "Audra, That man has cited your opinions more than once in public remarks. He knows exactly who you are. That was the moment the shape of the evening changed. Not because I wanted revenge, not yet, but because for the first time, I realized I would not be walking into that room alone. And my brother had no idea the person he was most ashamed to claim was the one person in that entire dinner party they would never be able to dismiss once the truth stepped into the light. By the time Friday evening arrived, I had already decided on two things. I would not give my family the satisfaction of seeing me rattled, and I would not make their lie easier by helping them tell it. Judge Caldwell picked me up just after 6, and we drove into the city under a cold Boston sky that made everything look sharper than it felt. She did not waste words on comfort. That was never her style. She simply glanced at me once, took in the black dress, the understated heels, the calm I had put on like armor, and said, "Good. Let them underestimate you in peace." The Union Club was exactly the kind of place my brother would find intoxicating. Dark wood, polished brass, quiet money, portraits of men who had probably built their reputations before anyone in the room was born. The private dining room overlooked the city lights, and every table was arranged with the kind of precision meant to signal class without ever having to say the word. When we stepped inside, I saw my family before they saw me. My parents were already smiling too hard. My brother was standing near the center of the room, with his hand at the waist of his fiancée, wearing the look he always wore when he believed he was finally being seen by the right people. She was elegant, poised, and dressed like someone who had grown up, never doubting she belonged in rooms like this. The second my brother noticed me, the color in his face changed. He crossed the room fast, but not fast enough to look panicked to anyone else. Under his breath, with a tight smile still frozen on his face, he told me I was late, even though I was not. Then his eyes flicked to Judge Caldwell, and for half a second I saw confusion. He did not recognize her, but he recognized importance when it walked into a room. Before he could ask anything, his fiancée appeared beside him, gracious in the polished way some people learn before they can legally drive. She greeted me like a stranger she had been told to be kind to, and my brother introduced me with an almost impressive level of dishonesty. He did not call me his sister. He said, "This is Audra. She helps out at the courthouse." I looked at him for a beat longer than was comfortable, but I did not correct him. That was the moment he relaxed just slightly. He thought silence meant surrender. My mother came over next, kissed the air near my cheek, and told me they had saved me a seat in the back where it would be quieter. Quieter meant out of sight. My table was the smallest one in the room, set near the service entrance, where the staff moved in and out with practiced invisibility. From there, I had a clear view of the main table, where my brother sat with his fiancée and her parents, like he had been rehearsing for this role his entire life. Judge Caldwell took a seat not far from mine, close enough to watch, far enough to let the evening unfold exactly as people intended it to. I sat down, folded my hands in my lap, and let the room reveal itself. My brother laughed too loudly. My father tried too hard. My mother kept scanning faces for approval. The fiancé's mother was charming in a controlled way, but her father was different. He said less, watched more, and carried himself with the kind of authority that did not need to announce itself. I could see why my brother was desperate to impress him. Men like that did not simply influence rooms, they defined them. The first round of toasts began, and I noticed something else. The man my family was trying so hard to impress was not especially captivated by any of it. He listened. He nodded. He smiled when required, but every so often his eyes drifted as if he were measuring something the rest of the room had failed to notice. Then, just before dinner service settled in, he stood and picked up a tray of champagne flutes from one of the servers. It was apparently a habit of his, something personal and old-fashioned. He liked to make a pass around the room himself, greeting guests table by table before the main course began. I watched him move from one table to the next, exchanging a few pleasant words, shaking a hand here, offering a polite smile there. My brother looked almost giddy, like this simple gesture had already become part of the family legend he planned to tell for the next 20 years. Then the judge turned toward the back of the room and started walking in my direction. At that point, I do not think anyone at the main table was paying much attention to them. I was exactly where they wanted me, quiet and small, and safely out of the way. But the second he reached my table and got a clear look at my face, his entire expression changed. He stopped so suddenly that the tray tilted in his hands, and one of the champagne flutes gave a soft, sharp clink against another. For a second, he just stared at me, not with confusion, not with the polite effort of someone trying to place a face, but with unmistakable recognition.